A gorilla is holding your child. Its hands could crush a coconut. 6 other gorillas pace behind it. The crowd above the glass has gone silent. And it is doing something nobody trained into it, cradling the boy's head the way you would cradle your own. This actually happened. August 19th, 1996. Brookfield Zoo, Illinois. A 3-year-old boy fell 24 feet into a gorilla enclosure, and an 8-year-old gorilla named Binny Jua picked him up like he belonged to her. Here's the part that should bother you. It wasn't really about him. It was about something in him, a shape, a sound, a signal that this gorilla had never seen before and somehow still recognized. You've been told animals fear humans. They don't. They fear adults. Babies get handed a different password. And somehow, you already knew it. You knew it before you could walk, before you could talk, before you understood a thing about the world you'd arrived in. If this was a coincidence, it should stop there. It doesn't. Let's slow down on what actually happened, because the details matter. The boy slipped past a barrier and dropped 24 feet on a concrete, unconscious on impact. Zoo staff didn't have time to intervene. This unfolded in front of a live crowd, caught on someone's camcorder, decades before anyone carried a phone that could film it. Binny Jua had her own 17-month-old daughter clinging to her back the entire time. She still crossed the enclosure, picked the boy up, and angled her body to shield him from the 6 other gorillas nearby. Then she carried him to the service door and waited for keepers. No trainer cued that. No treat prompted it. This wasn't a performance. It was a response. And responses like it turns out, aren't rare. There's a blueprint. You were built out of it. In 1943, an Austrian zoologist named Konrad Lorenz noticed something strange while studying animal behavior. Certain proportions, a big rounded forehead, oversized eyes, a small nose tucked low on the face, chubby cheeks, seemed to trigger tenderness in whoever looked at them. He called it kinshema, the baby schema. Lorenz assumed this was a human quirk, wired in to keep parents from abandoning something as useless as a newborn. But later researchers tested the theory further, and the results were stranger than expected. The same proportions softened people's reactions to puppies, kittens, even cartoon characters with no biological stake in anyone's survival. Which means the trigger isn't really about you. It's about a shape, a ratio your brain has been scanning for since before you had language for it. Binny Jua didn't need a translator. She just needed a face. A deer. In a field. With no reason to care about your species. In 2014, biologists Susan Lingle and Tobias Reed ran an experiment on wild mule deer and white-tailed deer in Canada. They had speakers in the grass and played recorded distress cries, not from fawns, but from marmots, seals, bats, house cats, and human infants. The deer approached. Again and again, mothers left their grazing and moved toward the sound, searching for a baby that wasn't theirs and wasn't even their species. But only when the cries' pitch matched the frequency range of their own fawns. Play them a coyote snarling or a deer just talking, and they ignored it completely. A deer and a human haven't shared a common ancestor in over 90 million years. They have nothing else in common, not diet, not habitat, not a single social structure. Except this. Something in the sound of a crying baby. Any baby apparently doesn't need a shared history to be understood. Think about that for a second. You can't breed for gentle without breeding for baby-shaped. Turns out, biology doesn't let you separate the two. Starting in 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belayev ran one of the strangest experiments in modern science. He took wild silver foxes and bred them for exactly one trait: calmness around humans. Nothing else. Not coat color, not size, not appearance. Within a few generations, something happened that nobody selected for. The tame foxes started looking different. Floppy ears, shortened snouts, patchy, puppyish coats. Traits that made them look, unmistakably, like babies of their own species, even as full-grown adults. Trust and youthfulness, it turns out, are wired to the same genetic switchboard. Select for one, and the other tags along uninvited, which means that softness you've been self-conscious about, round face, big eyes, nothing severe about you, isn't a flaw evolution forgot to fix. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. Once is a fluke. Twice is a pattern. This is neither. Elephant herds have been documented slowing their pace. Entire matriarchal lines rearranging their walking order around lost or distressed human children wandering too close. Dolphins have nudged struggling swimmers toward shore, swimmers who turned out to be kids, though not always. Neither species owes humans anything. Neither shares a single evolutionary branch with us in the last 60 million years. Primatologist Franz de Waal, writing about Bini Jua years later, didn't call her rescue an accident of temperament. He called it recognizable care, the same category of behavior primates show their own young, redirected, without hesitation, towards something that wasn't theirs. Elephants do it. Dolphins do it. A gorilla that could crush a coconut in one hand did it. The pattern isn't the exception. You are. Here's the part nobody tells you. Of all the mammals on this planet, you were one of the most pathetic babies ever born. A gazelle fawn stands within minutes of birth. A baby elephant can walk within an hour. A human infant can't lift its own head for months, can't feed itself for years, can't survive alone for the better part of a decade. That's not an insult. That's a strategy. Human brains grow so large, so slowly, that birth has to happen before development finishes, leaving every one of us born unfinished, radically dependent, utterly incapable of self-defense. Evolution's answer wasn't to toughen us up. It was to make our helplessness impossible to ignore. Loud cries, oversized eyes, a face built to summon help from anything nearby, human or not. You didn't survive infancy by being strong. You survived by being unmistakably worth protecting. So if this system is this old, this reliable, wired into species that share almost nothing else, why does it still fail? In May 2016, a 4-year-old boy fell into the gorilla enclosure at the Cincinnati Zoo. The gorilla, a 17-year-old male named Harambe, was shot and killed minutes later. Zoo officials made the call after watching him drag the boy through a moat, agitated by screaming crowds and rising chaos above the glass. The comparisons to Bini Jua were instant and understandably angry. But the two situations weren't identical. The boy in 1996 was unconscious and still. The boy in 2016 was awake, moving, crying out, signals that, under stress, a panicked animal can read as unpredictable rather than helpless. Zookeepers noted Bini Jua had also been raised closely around humans, which likely shaped her response. The recognition system is real. It is not a guarantee, and it never was. So the next time your face softens, unbidden, at a stranger's baby photo, that's not sentimentality. That's 90 million years of deer, gorillas, and elephants agreeing on something before language existed to argue about it. Every eye you've ever felt. Every stranger who slows their car for a wobbling toddler. Every animal documentary moment that gets you, even though you know exactly what button it's pressing. Think about that for a second. You've spent your whole adult life assuming cuteness was a marketing trick, something manufactured to sell greeting cards and phone cases. It's older than marketing, older than humans even. You just inherited the instinct and the vulnerability at the same time. Go back to that enclosure for a second. Bini Jua didn't know the boy's name, didn't know his mother was screaming somewhere above the glass. She had her own daughter to protect, 6 other gorillas around her, every evolutionary reason to stay guarded and let the world sort itself out. She crossed the enclosure anyway, not because she was trained to, because somewhere beneath a face she had never seen before, in a species she'd never share a word with, something in that boy was still speaking the oldest dialect mammals have. You spoke it too once, before you could walk, before you could talk, before you could do a single thing to earn anyone's protection. You were already fluent in the one signal almost nothing on Earth seems able to fully ignore. You didn't earn that trust. You were born already carrying it.